Hello, everybody, and welcome to the TeacherCast Educational Network. My name is Jeff Bradbury. Thank you so much for joining us today and making TeacherCast your home for professional development. On this episode of the Jeff Bradbury Show, we're going to be deep diving into design and human-centered design and what that actually means. And my guest today has had the opportunity to work with a number of great educational technology companies to help them create the solutions that you are using in your classroom each and every day. We're going to deep dive into a ton of different opportunities that you and your students can have if you want to reach out and work with them this year. I hope you guys are having a great start to the 2025. I've been having an amazing opportunity here. We've refreshed our website. We've launched some new podcasts. Head on over to teachercast.net/podcast today to check out not only all the episodes of the Jeff Bradbury Show, but also Digital Learning Today and Ask the Tech Coach. And if you're looking for audio or video, you can, of course, find us over on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on our YouTube channel over at teachercast.net/YouTube. My guest today is the Vice President of Partnerships and Operations at a great company called Optimistic Design, where she's had the opportunity to work hand in hand with Khan Academy and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation on amazing solutions for you in your classroom. I want to bring on today Miss Amanda Didio. Amanda, how are you today? Welcome to TeacherCast.
Hi, Jeffrey. I'm doing well, and thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to have you on today. We're talking a lot about how we can create, human-centered design and how teachers can really take this concept of design and bring it right into the classrooms. Before we get into some of that conversations, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Amanda Didio. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm the VP of Partnerships and Operations at Optimistic Design. We are a equity-centered strategy, design, and research consultancy. And as you mentioned, we've worked with organizations like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Khan Academy, MDRC, in helping them understand how to bring and leverage human-centered design and equity-centered design into some of the things that they're thinking about, whether it be an impact strategy or directly into some of the features or products that they're building, and also how to help leverage and use some of the tenets of this process where teachers and other policymakers can use it towards creating problem solving.
Now, I love that you're working hand in hand with these EdTech partners to create and design some of the tools that educators today are using in their classrooms. Let's talk a little bit about how this works. When you're working with somebody like Khan Academy and you're thinking about things like human-centered, equity-centered, let's define that a little bit. What does that mean to be human-centered, equity-centered, and how does that all fit in the context of the great work that teachers are doing today in the classrooms?
Yeah, absolutely. So human-centered design is a creative problem-solving approach. It really focuses on creating solutions based on the needs, experiences, and feedback of the people who will be using any sort of solution you're designing. And so fundamentally, it's meant to flip a bit of that paradigm of designing for to designing with. And so the way that we think about what it means to take a more equity-centered approach to that human-centered design, creative problem-solving approach is by thinking about a few other things. So when we work with organizations like Khan Academy or any other EdTech design curriculum provider, we have them think about a few other ways of recognizing how they step into designing for teachers and students by having a moment of their own power and privilege as part of that process. Being a designer, being a researcher, or even an engineer, you hold power. And so we help them recognize where does your own privilege sit and how can you think about that as flipping a process where you are shifting the power imbalance. The other is thinking a little bit more broadly about the problem space. Where is the problem in which you are designing for sits? Sometimes, a lot of the push to get features or things done to get into an actual curriculum product might be speed to market, right? And so taking that step back, actually talking to teachers, engaging them sooner in your process to help you define what that actual problem is also part of that process of ensuring that there's equity and there's a bigger participatory opportunity for teachers and students to engage. And the last is making sure that process is iterative, it's cyclical. There's many moments throughout that process to constantly engage. And most times, we think about engaging end users or whoever's using whatever solution we're designing or pushing out into the world is when it's done. And so what we really strive for is bringing whomever it is that is going to be using that product or benefiting from whatever you're designing further into it by helping them define the problems that you're solving and then actually designing with you. So really, human and equity-centered design is meant to create a space of co-design, of a practice where we're shifting a power imbalance and seeing whoever is using that product or service as a stakeholder, as a key part to the end-to-end process.
Your website is optimistic.design, and you can find out all about these great topics today. When a customer comes to you, or when a company comes to your website and wants to engage in your services, what are some of those first things that you discuss? How do we go from concept and communication through that implementation process? And what does that eventually look like once it hits teachers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a few ways that we think about engaging and meeting folks where they are. We recognize that, especially if you're in an organization and you've got a process that you're running full steam ahead, it's not always easy to completely dismantle that process and start to engage in something that might require a little bit more time or might require a little bit more resources. So what we first do is really understand where an organization or a team might be. What is the problem that they're currently engaging in? And then we help them understand where we can amplify or help them build capacity around bringing in a couple of methods to think about participatory design, think about designing or creating spaces for end users to be joined in that process sooner. So if a curriculum provider is coming to us and saying, hey, we want to understand how to create an equity-centered design process, we don't know where to start. And we know that we have our traditional research, design, and development process. We'll first start with saying, do you have teachers who you have access to? And if they don't, we'll help bring in teachers. We will recruit for them. We'll build an advisory panel to help them understand how to engage with them thoughtfully, and always encourage to bring them early on. So even if it's a new problem that they're trying to expand in a lesson plan or a curriculum, we'll encourage that they're bringing in teachers as soon as possible to help define what they should be prioritizing. And then the other is, how do we help them think about designing engaging activities where we can help to bridge the gap of design or prototyping something where it feels really accessible. A lot of that can come through really fun activities that teachers can engage in, or other means or methods that we can help build those organizations' capacity for. And the goal is that we are finding opportunities to teach or share different skill sets that these organizations can do themselves. So it really does span the gamut of just really understanding where one or what organization might sit within their own process, and how can we amplify, expand, build capacity into an existing process to ensure that we can sort of bring in those human and equity-centered design fundamentals and meet them where they are.
Well, I'm excited that you put it that way. I've had the opportunity over the last many years to work with startups of all sizes. And the first question I always ask is, who are the teachers who you're working with? Like, who are the people who are in there? And I'm always surprised at people who are trying for multiple seeds and big millions of dollars. And they're going, yeah, we don't have teachers yet. I'm going, how do you handle that? So the fact that you guys are actually sitting there with your companies going, let's bring in the educators, those who you're actually designing for, and see what they're thinking. That's an amazing opportunity for those companies to really get boots on the ground, thoughtful partners in this process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you, teachers are engaged. They want to be a part of this process. It helps to build trust, not only with that organization, but also for that teacher to understand I have agency and I want to continue to be involved. So when you're engaging at any level of whatever you feel like is the next step for you, you're creating a bigger experience, and you're able to provide an opportunity for a teacher to have a voice. And so it's extremely important. And again, we recognize it is a shift. It does take planning. It does take time. But the payoff and the ability to learn how to do that and establish a process that works for you in the next iteration of the next thing you're building is going to be much faster and much quicker. And so we're just delighted to be able to support organizations to do this work.
I would imagine going through this process, both with the educational eye, but also with the technology company eye, there's got to be a few challenges that pop up. What are some of the things that you always want to be looking out for, or that a lot of times companies struggle or have to overcome when bringing that solution into the classroom?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first is actually being in the classroom and seeing how your product works. Part of the design process is, yes, bringing, teachers and students into the process of designing with you, but it's also empathizing and actually understanding contextually how your product is being used. You'd be surprised how many organizations actually haven't had the opportunity to see their product being used in a classroom, and actually be able to know and contextualize, where things aren't quite meeting the mark. And I'd also say going to classrooms where there's communities who might not have all the access as your fully set up school or district. Because when you're able to really understand how and where the curriculum or product that you're building, technically, the technological aspect works within a community that might be experiencing poverty, or for communities who might not have that same access, you're able to now think about how to take an inclusive design approach to making sure that your product can work for all. A lot of solution providers really think about enabling technology that requires Wi-Fi access all the time. And what we recognize is not all schools have enabled devices with Wi-Fi, or even families not having the opportunity to have Wi-Fi in their home all the time. And so we're constantly having conversations on reinforcing and challenging to step out of the comfort zone of EdTech providers to think about the problem space a little bit more holistically.
One of the things that I've loved about this position of being able to bridge the gap between classroom and EdTech is you do get those questions from those startups and those entrepreneurs of how do we make this better? Can you think of a story of how you and your team were working with somebody and you kind of had to get them to see that light bulb, make them pivot, help them to understand that there might be a better way? How do you start to move educational technology when sometimes the creators don't see the final answer yet?
Yeah, I think that we get a lot of aha moments when we're actually bringing in students and teachers into working sessions, whether it's a new feature. I have a new feature that I want to launch, and we sort of ask them, okay, well, do you know if this new feature is based on a need for the market or the actual need for a student or a teacher in the classroom? And oftentimes they're a little bit perplexed by that. It's like, oh, we've gotten some feedback, but we don't actually know if the direction that we want to head is a validated one or is an actual need for a student or a teacher to engage with. So that aha moment to actually bring students earlier on in that process as they're doing paper designs or wireframing a potential path, getting a ton of feedback has been, I think, really earth-shattering for their process. And really recognizing like, wow, there's a big impact to be had on not launching something in the market and thinking we know the need, or there's an assumption based on very small set of data around maybe usability, but we haven't actually brought in students to help us define and prioritize the next path to move forward with next. And so there is a a lot of excitement and growth within product teams around building now capacity or research, their own research teams and pipelines for engaging students earlier on. And so I think that feels like the biggest example, not just with EdTech providers, but with funders too, in trying to fund solutions that might impact students. And like, have you asked the students if that's what should be funded? And bringing in their voices and actually showing them this is actually what they're saying has been, I think, a resound acknowledgement of a shift. And a lot of times it's the hardest barrier to entry. How do we engage students, especially K-12, younger students? And so what we've been able to do is provide that support for teams to do that so that it becomes more of a fiber of how they move through their work and actually gets it to the classroom and actually helps them think about reshifting a bit more about how they focus on what to build and why.
Expand on that a little bit. You got feedback from students, feedback from teachers, feedback from their team, from your team, from funder. I mean, everybody is, of course, trying to get their hands into this to make the best solution. How do you balance all of that? How do they determine where they should go? Ultimately, you know, if you want to say their boss, that's the users. What do they want to see? What are the kids actually doing? Is it easy for them? Is it not easy for them? But how do you balance all of that feedback coming in during one of those sessions to figure out what the right way to point your ship to the North Star?
Prioritization mapping. And that is a part of the process that we recognize, you know, we can't do everything. And if we can actually give that pen to students and teachers to prioritize what they think should be the next thing out of all the ideas that they've shared has been crucial. And of course, there's a balancing act between bringing in all of the feedback and triangulating and synthesizing, but really thinking thoughtfully around rigorous prioritization. And I think just continuously engaging with how to shift internal focus on the value of the end user and their voice in that process is it starts sometimes within, you know, a team and trying to lead by example of having students and staff actually help prioritize. But I do recognize that it's not always easy, and it does sometimes require a bit of an organizational mindset shift to be able to sort of think about their prioritization of their pipeline a little differently than just, you know, need or speed to market to get the newest feature out there to compete. So it might not be the most streamlined answer, but absolutely trying to help empower prioritization with your students and staff who are engaging in your process, and then managing that up.
We're talking today to Amanda Didio from Optimistic.Design. And Amanda, everything that you're talking about here is stuff that, frankly, as an educator, I'm glad is helping and happening and being able to be brought into our classrooms. For any teacher out there that's saying, how does somebody get into this area? What was your journey like? How did you get connected with Optimistic Design, and what kind of skills do you need to bring to the table to be able to work in this kind of a field?
Yeah, I think, you know, my journey to education and within the realm of technology has been fruitful and eye-opening and really resonant to what I want to see in the world. And I come from traditional product R&D, not within education, and was really eager and excited by the human and equity-centered design process as a means to challenge and sort of dismantle the status quo. And so with the opportunities that I had been given to start to work with EdTech and products within that space and services and impact strategies, and the ability to see human and equity-centered design processes, that in constant engagement, participatory design, shifting the power imbalance, challenge the status quo of R&D, was really aligned to the work I wanted to see and the work I wanted to do. And as a, you know, product manager, as a team lead who I'm working with engineers, designers, developers, again, it's not always easy, but I'm really encouraged and delighted that the education landscape is ripe for this work. And so, I think really empowering, if teachers or those who are within that ecosystem want to make any sort of transition to do design research or to be a part of that process, they certainly can reach out to me directly. We are always looking for teachers, administrators, district leaders, families, students, anyone who is a part of that education landscape to be a part of our project work. And we also really value a reciprocal means of ensuring that they get value exchange out of working with us. And that is obviously compensation, but it's also giving them the opportunity to learn and understand design thinking, to understand inclusive design, and to be able to be a part of the process helps them learn a little bit more about what this work is. And so they might even be able to take some of the things that we do and sort of the processes that we work through into their own everyday practices, and potentially even lend them to activities they might do with their students, or think about solving a problem in a completely different way that they might have not thought of.
So it is January, and we're looking forward to a great school year ahead. But I know a lot of teachers are also looking at the summer months and what's happening in September. I know for myself, this is when we start looking at the ISTE season and what companies are going to be coming out with some great things. Talk to us a little bit about where you see the landscape right now. What is on the horizon? What maybe are you working on? What can teachers be expecting from great companies coming up next school year and beyond?
Yeah, I think I'm really excited about engaging in EdTech organizations and attending conferences about how we think specifically about emerging technologies in the classroom. I know AI has literally gotten our eyes and ears for the last few years now, and it's making its way rapidly into the classroom, probably too fast for teachers to catch up to really understand how to use it and how their students are using it. And so we've really thought about, what does it mean to slow that down, and how can we guide EdTech providers towards thinking about equitable outcomes and the impacts of emerging technologies as they're building them into their products, and understanding sometimes the unintended consequences of moving so quickly and integrating these emerging technologies into products and solutions. So I'm really excited to be able to do more work in that space. I'm also really interested in hearing more from other folks around rubrics for measuring the impact around designing AI or any other emerging technology with equity in mind. That is just like, it gets me excited. We've thought about a couple of our own design principles towards equitable design principles through designing math experiences for K-12 and leveraging an equitable approach towards specifically AI and emerging technologies. So you can find those on our websites. But into the next year, we'll see a lot more of those already in market solutions be used. So I'm really excited and interested to hear more about how other folks are using it and the impacts of that. So I'll be at South by Southwest EDU. I'll probably be at ASU GSB this year. So I'm really excited to see and hear from teachers and actually work with them on how their students and themselves are sort of coping with the rapid push of AI and probably every digital EdTech product they're working with.
What is the best way for somebody to reach out and get in touch with you guys?
Yeah, you can reach out to me directly, amanda.didio@optimistic.design, or through our website. There is a contact us in our informations tab, and our website is optimistic.design. So please reach out. We'd love to hear from you.
We are going to make sure that we have all the links over in our show notes over at the Jeff Bradbury Show. You can find out more about this and all of our shows over at teachercast.net/podcast. Amanda, thank you so much. Please come back on this show. We'd love to continue this conversation and deep dive into this, especially as we get into those summer months and we start to see some of the newer technologies that's coming out, some of the newer things that are being designed. Amanda, thank you so much for your time today.
No, it's a pleasure, Jeffrey. I'm so excited to talk about this work, and it's been fun.
We want to say thank you guys for making TeacherCast the home of your professional development. If you're looking to be a guest in the show, please head on over to teachercast.net, hit /contact. Would love to have you guys on and share some of the great things that's happening in your classrooms this year and beyond. And that wraps up this episode of the Jeff Bradbury Show. On behalf of Amanda and everybody here on TeacherCast, my name is Jeff Bradbury, reminding you guys to keep up the great work in your classrooms and continue sharing your passions with your students.